Welcome to Business and Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Braco Pobric. This episode is sponsored by Life Success Academy, a place where you recreate your business and personal happiness. Hello, everyone. So today I have a really very, very special guest, our friend, Olga Chin. She's the founder of Enterprise Technology and a former banker. And I wanted to add that she's also mompreneur, entrepreneur, started her own business. So Olga, I just wanted us to chat about, business happiness. How do you handle all of this on a daily basis? With the two kids and yet being like so successful. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about.
So I do have two kids. In terms of background, I had my daughter kind of very early on in my life. Before I was senior in banking, worked a lot of hours. So that was a tough part of my life. I would say right now it's a little better because I can balance it more. And I think that a lot of it, so I have two kids. One of them is 12, one of them is 6. Brett, I do have a dog. I don't know if you know about that, but I do have a dog as well.
I've learned that
Three
you have a
kids.
dog.
She takes up a lot of time. But look, I have a lot of support. I'm very grateful for support from my husband, but also being able to kind of compartmentalize things, right? I'm a big believer that there are certain things that are important in personal life and in professional life. And I don't focus on the minutia details or anything else. I know that they're goals, right? They're goals and, both for my kids where I know that it's important for them to do X, Y, and Z, right? And that's kind of what I focus on. I know I can't do it all. Same with the business side too. I try not to get bogged down in details necessarily, the unnecessary details, but always have this like North Star in mind. What am I trying to do? So same for the kids. Like, what do I want them to be like?
So what you said, bunch of interesting things, but I wanted to start from what you said at the end, that really big picture. And I know one thing for sure, that successful people always have that big picture. It's not about little details. They will outsource, and we can talk about that, all these little things that somebody else can do for them, and even big things, right? Hire the best people they can. But that's the big picture for business. For family, I really didn't think of that way. And that's why I think, I don't think I wasn't that good as you are today with your family and with the business. I was doing okay, but seriously, so it's really hard. So, and you also said something that you compartmentalized, right? And that's something that's really, really important, right? So, and I know you have a lot of help. A lot of people have help, but they still, you know, they still struggle. They still struggle balancing business and the personal life. And you said also something interesting. You said now you have a more. I mean, when you were, a senior banker, you worked crazy hours, and I assume you do now too. So, what's the difference between
But
having
it's
your own
easier.
business? It's easier. Tell me
It's
why.
easy
Why?
because I'm in control of it. Because Brett, and that's one of the biggest advantages of running your business is on one hand, you do work a lot more hours. And a lot of it is also like your brain is on all the time. That's the biggest difference. When I was a banker, my hours were pretty bad, but then I was able to say 9 o'clock at night, I'm going to put my phone away. And I really don't necessarily care. Here, I care, right?
That is so cool because I don't know if you know, I don't think you do, but I actually left my job and this will be my full-time thing,
It's
uh,
awesome.
and and it's thanks. And it's really interesting what you said, like it's 24/7, it never stops, And this morning I woke up like 3:30, 4 o'clock, I was up, I did my exercise, I've been working since then. And it's not to say that there were not days when I worked as much, doing for the company, but it's just, you're right, it's a different. And in a way, it's harder actually because you
It's much
always want.
harder, but don't you also feel that, for example, my team, my entire team at Enterprise knows that between the hours of 3:30 and 4:30 or 5, you're probably not gonna get much of a response from me, right?
So they
Because
know
they
that.
understand. But then if they need something, I'll always be there at night, and I offer the same flexibility to everyone. But of course, it's different for me. It's my thing. But I think, Brad, so my advice to you is, the flip side of this is that your brain is always on. You're always thinking, well, did I miss something? You can always do more. That's like every day I go to sleep being like, well, my to-do list didn't really get shorter today. Probably got longer, but I found ways to shut it off a little bit. So I can tell you like some of my
Yeah,
techniques. Uh,
how do you do that?
I found forms of exercise where it's really really difficult on the body, such that you're not thinking about work. I love, for example, Zumba, where the music is so loud that you're not going to be thinking about work. And I also recently, about half a year ago, I restarted doing Bikram yoga, and that is exercise that you do in like 107-degree room for 90 minutes. And trust me, you're not thinking about anything else besides the fact that you're gonna die in the next like 90 minutes. And that to me is like I need that. I need to shut my brain off sometimes.
That's a really good point because certain exercises don't shut off the brain. Like you might be doing a little bit downstairs on a treadmill, but keep thinking of something else. Like, sometimes I used to, and I'm trying to do what you just said, to make sure that brain is shut off from your internal dialogue and your business creation stuff. How about the children? So, both of you guys, you and your husband, are very successful people. He's like amazing scientist, and I happen to know him
I'm very
personally. And that's why I
nice.
said this. And it's like the nicest scientist I met, the nicest guy, and so successful, and so are you. And yet you find so much time and priorities, and with your family and kids. How does that work? Here's it is. Olga wakes up whatever time, and how does your day goes when you wake up, and how does it go? What do you do, and how do you fill the time with the children?
Well, first of all, my entire family is very supportive, including like even the dog to some degree, uh, because they understand. They understand. We all when I started Enterprise, and I left my full time job, and that's a really big decision.
Huge.
Psychologically, it's huge. Everybody has to be bought in. I actually feel
Yes.
like the people who are the most successful, as I see it, and I have some friends who have amazing businesses. Your entire, like your husband, your spouse. If your spouse is supportive, that's like half the battle. So for us, my husband is not necessarily a morning person, so he takes care of kids in the mornings a lot, and he
Nice.
lets me kind of start very early on. We have some part of the team overseas, and so they start working earlier. So it's really helpful if I'm there in the morning. But in the afternoon, a lot of it is like I take over. But Bratza, I'll tell you, my kids very well understand like that there could be conference calls, that there are some important ones, and frankly, that's a good lesson for them too. That there are some days that I'll be there. For example, today is a good example that at 1 o'clock, I'm a room parent for my kids' class, and we're doing a Halloween party for them. So I'm doing that. I'll take off in at 1 to 2, and then at 2 o'clock, I have a very big call with one of the top banks, right? So you can balance it very well as long as you're focused. And my kids very much understand that. I hope that they learn the grit concept from it.
You know what? They do learn a great lesson. But I think what's happening is they are understanding because they understand there's a something because now, like when I was, this was a full-time job, and I also always had some part-time businesses. I always had an office, even in a small apartment in Brooklyn. And our son, he grew up that way. The door was closed, and he was like, 4, 5 years old. He would knock. If there's no answer, he would never ever come into the room. right? I would just come out, if I worked from home, get to the kitchen, my wife would be there. She would be like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, I want to have lunch. Go work. I'll bring you lunch, right? So what you just said is really key, that everybody understands, and that without support of family, one or two things are going to happen. Either you will not have that family anymore, right? You might
Yeah.
be extremely successful, but you might lose them, or you're going to knock the business and say, forget it. I want to go back to my family. I mean, seriously, yeah, I think there's just one of these two things. And that's why I think
Bronson, you
it's
know
so
what I
important that you
also
have it.
found that was really interesting to me is that my family is okay talking to me about it. So you met my
Mm,
husband. He's probably the opposite of me personality wise. He's very calm, very even key, like nothing ever bothers him. I'm the opposite. I'm more emotional. The really cool part, and I'm lucky with that, is that he listens. He listens and he will talk about it. Whereas I think that he could have said, "Look, I'm tired of you talking about work all the time," right? And kids are this, they kind of the same way, so they hear this. But we also, to go back to your earlier question, day to day, right? We do family. I cook almost every night, so we do that. So that's really important to me, and I enjoy it. I have like music on in the kitchen. It's really fun.
yes.
And then there are other things that are important. Like my kids speak Russian. That's important to me. So I read to them at night. So they're like, but it's not important to me. What, like, some of the other stuff is not important necessarily. So pick and
Nice.
choose.
But nice. But you know what? But again, what I think what the lesson is for people that we can draw is, it's not, this just didn't, I know you keep saying, right, they're supportive, but this just didn't happen. This is the relationships that you guys worked on for years, right? And you probably will be working like I am with my wife and kids until the day I'm around here, because it doesn't stop. That work doesn't stop, right? It really does not. And that's
But
what
no, my
got you.
mom and dad. Yes, you're
But
absolutely right. Yeah, that is my mom and dad. But go ahead.
yeah, but that's really, I think that's the relationship that we establish, and that, like you said, I mean, your parents establish, and it starts from early age. That's really, that's what get us to the point, right? To That's what got you to the point where you are today, I think.
I think that for me, my husband is one pillar. I mean, my mom and dad, they've never not been supportive
That's
ever.
amazing.
Um,
And I happen to know that they support you even today. That they do some work, both of them,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for
They
your
they,
company.
they do. It was funny. So my father got involved with enterprise kind of early on, mostly because I hired developers, and he came in. He's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what's going on here?" So he stays involved, and I tried to convince him to join full time. And I said, "Dad, like, if you don't join full time, I'm going to hire somebody for that role." And he gets very offended. And so I think to him, this is like such a cool thing that he's doing. And my mom, I like to say she butts in, like, to project manage. She thinks that she can get everybody in line. So they enjoy it. I actually think, like, I feel so bad asking them for help, but I got to tell you, I think it actually makes them happier somehow. So
Ye- Yes, you're absolutely right. It's not that you ask them for help, it makes them happier. Because, and again, that's the relationships with our kids that we establish in early age stage. And we want to keep supporting them, you know, and that's what makes us happy. That's true. That's true.
there's a part my dad once said. He said that if I'm not involved, everybody's going to cheat, and they're not going to do a good job. Like, I have to make sure that they do a good job. I was like, okay, Dad, you go do that. If it gives you pleasure. No, I think it's really important, for me personally. I think that's what makes it or breaks it. And again, I've seen kind of stories like that. And also, here's the other piece that I think is really important. So, my family's support of me is not dependent on the outcome of it. And that is really critical because I know fully well that, and this is not going to happen, but if enterprise fails for whatever reason, they're not going to think differently of me. And I
That
know
is
that.
that is also the key. That is also the key, especially with you and your husband and kids. Establishing that from very beginning. That's also the key. So that's you. It's 100% support. Now some people may say, well, I don't have that support, from my husband, from my wife, from my partner. I don't have that support from my kids. What do I do? Seriously, some people will just say that, like, and there's no simple answer. But is there any recommendation?
Then you have to love yourself that much more. No?
Everything starts from us loving ourselves, right? Self-love is the first.
And I struggle with that, Bratza. I know my mom actually does that very well, and she's a big believer of that. You have to love yourself like somebody else, right? Because we're so hard on ourselves. We're constantly in our heads like, am I doing a good job? Did I do this? Did I not do that? But you have to put that behind you. So if you don't have that support network, it's all the more important that you develop this self-love. It's unconditional love. Give yourself an opportunity to fail, and that's okay. It's okay.
There is no success without failure, is it?
No, absolutely not. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard. And there are days, my company and I have a partner in the company. His name is Dylan. We joke a lot that every day is like eating glass. Literally, it's hard. And every day there are problems. And then you step back, you're like, oh my God, we created this company. We have like all these big clients. But day to day, oh my God, it's brutal. It is brutal. It
Day
makes you
to
question everything.
day to day could be, and I understand you have, like, your clients are some of the largest banks. I mean, you guys are doing really, like, amazingly well. How long ago? When did you start enterprise technology?
So I went full time in July of last year, so just a little over a year ago. It was
Wow.
percolating as an idea for a few months before that, but we didn't really have much until we all, that I when I could go full time. I've thought about it for probably a year, and started kind of working on prototypes and so on and so forth. So, but officially, we're just a little over a year old. So very new, very new.
It's amazing. And you already have how many employees or people working?
Just a little under 20, but we are about to do a fundraising. And so we're going to probably three times that. So triple the employees. And I have no idea how, by the way. So if you
Yeah.
haven't,
So so you know what that's another key. I mean, honestly, to business success and happiness. What you just said, I have no idea how. You know how many times I said that to, I just did something recently with my business, and there was another individual who said it's really impossible. Like, you just started, you can't. I was like, yes, I can, and I don't know how, but I'll do it. So
you
that's a
learn,
success. You
you
learn.
learn.
What would you suggest, folks who, maybe particularly moms, because that's really, I think sometimes moms struggle to start their own business. We all do, but particularly because, let's be fair, we all think we're sharing, and we should be, and of course we are, responsibilities equally. But mom is mom, it's just so much more
Oh, it's not
involved.
equal, Bratza.
It's
It's not.
not. I know. I'm trying, but it's not. So what would you suggest to do? Let's say, because I have a lot of folks, my students who, they might have a full-time job and they want to move into something else. Maybe it's a little part-time coaching. Maybe it's, some of them, want to start a company. But again, you really have to be careful. You can't just drop everything you have unless you have a, you know, not just moral support, but let's be fair, money in the bank so you can live a year or whatever, however you design it. So what would you suggest them to do? What are the steps? How to?
Bratza, I think that the reason you what you said right now, why that happens, is because moms have a lot of guilt, right? Moms have guilt that, well, I'm not baking cookies for the school, that, oh, I'm not going to be that mom that drives my son to soccer practice, right? And you always feel guilty, like I should be doing more. And social media these days, it makes me feel horrific. Like I'm not doing half the things that apparently everybody else is doing. But at the same time, I think what you got to understand is like, well, but what are the values that you want to teach kids? So
Yes.
start from there, right? Is the value that, you know, I'm making cookies all day long? Maybe not, right? And that's okay. For me, the values are that I want them to be proud of me, proud of themselves, and know the value of hard work. And so if you look at, but it's hard. You have to remind yourself that every day, right? So when you're a mom that struggles to figure out daycare situation, well, why is my kid in daycare longer than other kids? Let's take that as an example. When you pick them up, instead of feeling guilty, explain to the child, look, mom has to work and this is why she works there. And aren't you proud of her? She did this today. It's so cool, right? I can tell you, for example, my daughter, sometimes there are like different articles that are like getting published with my interviews or whatever it is, right? Nothing major, but she loves that stuff. She'll go and she'll scroll through it, and she's so proud of it. And that's what I want to teach her, not necessarily that. Hey, I was never, my kids were always the last ones to get picked up at daycare, and that's okay. Like I'm okay with
They get picked up. They never really, there was
that.
no day
well,
when
well,
you guys didn't show up for 3 days. Yeah, I mean,
My parents once did that, by the way, Brad. So I'll tell you
yeah,
that story off the podcast one time. But yes, I've always picked up.
yeah, that's right. So yeah, I think that's. I mean, you're absolutely right. We keep thinking, if I don't, you know, yes, I think you're right. You're right about guilt, and of course, as a mom. But I think learning them, hard work and that gets valued is like so important, right? And honestly, I think what's really the most important is what they see at home. It's not like what we tell them, but what they
Yeah.
see with you guys doing today. That's what somebody told me, 30 years ago when my son was little. Just don't worry about it. We lived in Brooklyn, and you start worrying about all this stuff and drugs, and you go, you know what? They're gonna like do all kinds of things you don't want them to do. But the bottom line is what they see at home. That's what they're going to take.
And it's also the small steps. So I think the second piece of advice is somebody said that. So none of this is, by the way, original. I take a lot of different things from friends, but somebody said that every day, if you have a goal, every day have a step towards that goal. What did you do to accomplish that goal? Because otherwise, you're wasting a day. Even if it's something so minuscule, just start and every day do it's one step forward. Because what ends up happening is that after a year of small steps, you'll get somewhere amazing and you look back and like, whoa, how did I do that? And that's how I think about my career journey. I actually have a friend, to your point. One of my friends actually just started a coaching business. Um, kind of like executive coaching with a little twist to it. She's a single mom. She just got divorced. She has some health issues as well, but she really wants to do it. She feels like it's her calling. And every day she's like, I don't have time for anything. I have two kids. My husband, ex-husband doesn't help. But every day she's like, well, what do I do? And she's thinking about it. And I think she looks going to be hugely successful. So
Thanks. That's a great advice. I actually asked the folks, my coaches, same thing. What are you going to do today that will get you closer to that end goal, whatever that goal is? You got to have that and then do little steps. That's a great advice. So basically, you're telling them to set that goal, whatever it is that they want, create that passion, calling, right? And then every day do a little step and they'll get there, right? If that's what they really want, right? If they have that big why, they'll get there. Is that true?
but how do you develop the why? That's the
What,
hard piece, right?
well, here's my question to you then. What was your why? You had to have big why. Why did you start doing what you're doing today?
Brett, a lot of people ask me that question, and I actually don't really have a great answer. I wish I did, and I'm just not going to lie to you. I don't. I think that as a child, there were folks in Russia that doubted. I was really shy as a kid, and I I want to do something great. Like I really do. I'm fascinated. I look up to people who start their own businesses who are successful. I am so, again, fascinated by them. I think it's amazing. And those are my role models. And at some point, I thought, well, if I look up to those people, let me try to do it instead of, coming to work every day and not enjoying my job. So, there was a lot of like that kind of psychological thing. And then the further that I get, the more opportunities we uncover. And it's interesting because I actually do this thing called investor letters. So for the past year or so, I have written a monthly letter to our investors and friends and supporters. And a lot of it is like, well, we hired 2 employees, we did this release. And so we make them sound super exciting, and they are, but it's just a summary. Now, Brett said the coolest thing is when you look back. And there was one investor who said, why don't you save all those letters? And once every year, just go to the last year's one on that same month. And I did that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we've done so much. We were like babies back then. Now we have this. And I think it's really important to give yourself credit because every day is so hard. But just think back, where were you last year? Could you imagine doing this last year? And I think it gives me at least confidence for sure. Because if I
Yeah,
could do that in a year, would have how right now for me we have these like huge goals, right? We're gonna raise a lot of money. We have these partnerships with some of the largest banks, but I couldn't even imagine that a year ago.
yeah, that's what I call success file. In the old days, there was a file cabinet. Like, well, we still have some of us. And then you put your file, and I years ago created a success file, and I would put
Mhm.
things that I did really well. And every once in a while, when I feel down, I just open it up and go, oh, look what I did, right? So that's a great exercise. And thanks for being so honest to say, hey, and some of us, don't think or don't maybe have that big why, but it sounds like in your case, at least a little why was to prove myself and to prove other people that I can do this, and I'm doing
And the
it.
team, for the team as well. I have an amazing team and they have the same thing. We get on the phone, I'm like, guys, can you imagine like what we've just done? And it seems like to them, they're like, well, yeah, we kind of knew that like we did it. Well, but and Brad said it actually works really well for kids too. So what my husband and I do in the basement, we have boxes where I store their artwork every year and I label it like Natalie grade 5, right? And sometimes we go back and say, like, do you want to take out a box? And so we take out a box and she would look at her painting. She's like, I did that. I was like, yeah, imagine how far you've grown, right? It's the same exact idea. I think it works really well.
Great lesson learned that you shared, and it's at the end that we should really, never compare ourselves with other people, but compare ourselves with ourselves. So you can only look back and see
Yeah, I guess
how
so.
was I a year ago. That's what I'm comparing myself. I can't compare myself with somebody else. Totally different circumstances, a million things. But I can compare myself with me a year ago. That's
Mhm.
what you doing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, that's exactly what I think we do. So
Awesome. Now, listen, Olga, thank you so much. This was such
of
an
course.
amazing, beautiful discussion. And I know that listeners they just got so many lessons. I can't even repeat them. They need to listen to this from the
It
beginning
was
to
really good to see you. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. But Brad, so thank you so much. Really good to see
thank,
you.
thank you so much. It was such a pleasure seeing you.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Become the Life Success Academy founding member. Go to academyoflifesuccess.com and click on founding member to get 60% off full membership.